Tesla stock, it's way up 100% year to date. Have you picked up any more Tesla stock this year? And would you consider buying at current levels?
Yeah, I picked up some at the very beginning of this year. It was a brutal year for all of us Tesla shareholders to have to go through last year. It was, very, very brutal. But at the end of 2022, and specifically going into this year, the stock is just very undervalued. For anybody that has a longer term outlook on Tesla, very undervalued. So I actually bought some shares for the first time in a long time, as in since 2019. And so instead of just being a holder of the stock, I was a buyer. No, for me personally, I'm not going to add any more Tesla shares here now that the stock's 250 plus. Not that I think it's not a good deal. You can still make probably a good amount of money over the next few years in Tesla stock. Just for me personally, it's already a huge position for me. I already have, I believe it's over $400,000 in that stock. And so for me, that's a really good sized position. And I feel comfortable with kind of my level of risk in regards to Tesla. I've had as much as around probably close to $1 million or maybe even over $1 million at one point in Tesla stock. And so for me, kind of in that 400,000 to 500,000 range feels about right. But yeah, you could say if I didn't own Tesla, would I be buying Tesla shares? The answer to that is probably. There's a lot of very appetizing deals out there in the market right now, but Tesla is still it's still undervalued. The forward P, people look at the forward P, they think, it's got to be very overvalued. When you look at the growth rates that the company should command over this next several years, it's not nearly as overvalued as it might look on first surface when you look at a forward P or something like that.
So, considering Tesla stock primarily from a stock point of view, from an investment point of view, what are the key metrics or things you're looking out for, whether it's top line growth or bottom line growth over the next few years?
Yeah, obviously revenue is always going to be, first and foremost when it comes to Tesla. Are they able to continue to put up, very nice double digit growth, as in 25% numbers, 35% numbers in good times and hot years, maybe 45% numbers. We'll see what Cybertruck puts up. That should be very impressive. Gross margin, extremely important in regards to Tesla. And obviously in regards to Tesla's margins, they've taken certainly a hit over the past few quarters as a lowered price, right? And we really want to see margin stabilization, and then we want to see margins hopefully start trending back up, especially in the back half of this year and moving into future years. And then the bottom line is obviously very, very important for this company. At the end of the day, Tesla, from the masses, Tesla look at Tesla as an auto manufacturer. And if you're an auto manufacturer, you got to put up those extremely impressive net income numbers, those extremely impressive EPS numbers, because that gets everybody off your back in terms of looking at it from just a valuation standpoint of your profitability, your PE ratio, your forward PE ratio, and things like that. So those are three main metrics I'm looking at personally. I'm actually excited to see the growth in the energy business. I mean, that business has never really it's never really what's been attracting me to Tesla. But I've seen some of the business and some of their storage products and whatnot in some of these recent numbers that I'm absolutely blown away with. So that's a business line I'm actually very excited to see over this next 1 to 2 years and what happens there.
Yeah, definitely. Energy growth it's kind of gone parabolic. They've just launched their mega factory in California. They've got another one announced in China. What do you think the playbook could be there for the energy? Do you think they could just start banging out these factories all over the world like they've been doing gigafactories?
It's a potential. The reason the energy business has never really gotten my interest as much is because that's a harder business for me to see how big the opportunity really is. And I would put it like this. I kind of almost feel like somebody would have felt if they were investing in Amazon stock back in, let's say, 2008, 2010, 2012, before Amazon was really respected from AWS. Because back then, people really just looked at Amazon as this big e-commerce company, right? Kind of like most people look at Tesla right now as just this big auto company. And so for me, it's hard for me to say what they can scale to, what they can do revenues there. For me, I just look at it as a cherry on top, and it's this huge opportunity that I don't know how big it is. I don't know, if this is a $20 billion business down the road, or 30 billion, or 50 billion, or 100 billion, and that's pretty exciting to me. I look at Tesla just on the auto business, and I feel like the stock's undervalued. That energy business is the AWS, in my opinion. Just it's a cherry on top that we'll see how big it grows to. But I'm very excited.
And we've had news recently from the Fed that they are halting rate hikes. What exactly will happen for the rest of the year, we don't know. But interest rates has a very big impact on the auto market. The higher the rates, the higher the monthly costs of new vehicles, the less people are buying them. It's as simple as that, pretty much. Are we at the light at the end of the tunnel then for this slowdown in the auto market as rates haven't been raised, which is quite a big moment?
Yes, it's a big moment. I don't think we're necessarily out of the woods yet. I think this is still an overhang for Tesla and all auto manufacturers, to be honest. But I think it's specifically an overhang for Tesla. The other big kind of negative thing outside of just interest rates is consumer confidence, which consumer confidence has been in a pretty bad place for at least, I would say, about 18 months now at this point in time, 12 to 18 months. And so consumer confidence has improved a little bit off the lows of 2022, which we saw about the lowest we've ever seen in terms of consumer confidence. But I would say between if we can get interest rates to hopefully start going down at some point next year, I think that could be definitely a tailwind for Tesla's business rather than a headwind that's going forward. But ultimately, consumer confidence as well, because let's be honest, the going to purchase an auto, it's the second biggest purchase for almost everybody out there, right? You got people go to buy a home, buy a car. The car is usually the second biggest purchase in somebody's life. And if you're not confident, if you're not feeling great about your financial situation, you're not going to go spend $50,000, $40,000, $60,000 on a Tesla. That's just bottom line with that. So two overhangs. I feel like we might be getting in a better place, but I'm very kind of, I would call it middle of the road in regards to my feeling on that. I don't feel like we're out of the woods yet. I feel like we have potential, but don't get too excited yet.
Yeah. Okay. When I consider investments, sometimes I think, it's really good to simplify your thought process. And sometimes I simplify it into two things. One is the current growth rate. And then the second is how many years of growth. Now, when you think about Tesla from this point of view, is it kind of the holy grail of stocks? Because not only is there potentially a high growth rate, that high growth rate could be around for a decade, 2 decades with the amount of other call options they've got in the business. How do you sort of think about that?
Yeah. So I think about it a few ways. For Tesla, I look out and I really try to view like the next 3 to 5 years. And although it's very fun to think about the next 10 years, the next 20 years with Tesla, it is hard to forecast, right? And for a lot of us Tesla shareholders, we've heard it for a million years now. The competition's coming. The competition's coming. We've heard it for certainly as long as I've been a shareholder, and even before that. And Jim Chanos going on CNBC and all these folks, right? The competition's coming. And the one thing I will say is it looks like the competition is finally trying to enter the market in a more serious way this year, next year. And we'll see if it's actually any competition. So far, we haven't seen these other players really cause any sort of damage in regards to Tesla's business model. And I'll say we're going to have a lot more clarity over the next 24 months. Because if we still don't see Tesla's business model being hurt from the competition 24 months out, then I think that gets a lot easier to run numbers and projections for Tesla over the next 5-10 years, right? Because then you got that kind of out of the way. Right now, we're still trying to see like what are all these other auto manufacturers doing. They're having a lot of problems trying to ramp EVs at all right now, and they're also having demand issues. That's the other problem, and that's what kind of is giving me confidence about, do people really want EVs or do they just want a Tesla? Because I'm looking in Lucid, for an example, that is seen as they're supposed to have a really good product. They're having a lot of demand issues when it comes to Lucid, and you got to say, why is that, right? And so in regards to Tesla, it's a very exciting story. But if you're trying to run projections on Tesla, you need to run it, I think, 5 different scenarios. You need to run a ultra bearish scenario. You need to run a bearish scenario. Your middle case, so this is like your base case, I call it. What you think, like if you had to put your life on a line, that's the case you think, right? You need to run a bull case and a super bullish case, okay? And you need to run different revenue projections on what you think are realistic under those different scenarios in gross margins, and then what do you think can be actually the bottom line? And I think you can do that for about the next 5 years. But the next 10 years, I think it's much more difficult because we know the landscape obviously changes over time. And Tesla right now has a huge advantage over the competition. Do they keep the pedal to the metal? I think so. But that's obviously not always a possible thing to predict. Maybe they lose their competitive edge at some point. I hope not. I think they got it, but we shall see.